Hi, everyone. Hi there. Welcome to our annual Hitwise Holiday Planning webinar, co-presented with Best Buy. Today, our presenters are going to be sharing the latest product trends, search data, and key strategies to plan for the 2017 holiday season. My name is Rochelle. I'll be your moderator today. And before I hand it over to our presenters, I've just got a little bit of housekeeping to cover. One is that we really do encourage attendees to contribute to the discussion today by submitting questions. You can do that at any point during the presentation by clicking on the questions panel in the bottom right corner of your screen, and we'll be answering those questions during the Q&A at the end of the webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording as well as the slides will be available to you to download and sent to you via email either today or tomorrow after the webinar occurs. So now I'll hand it over to John Fetto and Sarah Wright, our presenters for the day, to get the webinar started.
Thanks, Rochelle, and thanks for joining us today, Sarah. I really look forward to hearing what you have to share with us.
Well, thank you, John, for the invitation to participate in today's conversation.
Great. So we're just going to jump right in by looking at some of the total visit trends that we observed during the last 3 holiday seasons, looking at a collection of the top online retail sites that we refer to as the Hitwise Retail 500. So last year, we saw that Americans paid about 11.7 billion visits to those top retail sites during the holiday season, and those include really the months of November and December. And that those visit counts were about a 2% or so increase over what we saw in 2015, which was about 11.5 billion total overall. Now, that boils down to about 1 billion visits each week, with the weeks of Thanksgiving and a week of Cyber Monday generating the greatest traffic levels of the seasons, or about 1.9 billion visits each week. So this year, we may actually see peak week hit over 2 billion visits, which would be a big milestone. Now that said, we did see growth last year slowed down a little bit over the previous years, and a lot of that is due to the fact that Amazon experienced a huge year-over-year increase between 2014 and 2015, while last year visits to Amazon were pretty flat year-over-year. And if we're looking at kind of what to expect this year, visits to Amazon are pretty much flat. They're up a little bit, about 5% year over year. So if we're looking at this year ahead, I would expect to see a line fairly consistent with not just a tad bit higher than what we saw in 2015 and 2016, but don't expect any huge significant increases in visits this holiday season. Now, if we break that down day by day, as expected, the top 3 traffic days of the year were Black Friday, Thanksgiving Day, and Cyber Monday. Interestingly, in 2015, we saw that Thanksgiving Day actually unseated Cyber Monday as the top day, and then last year, that title was stolen back by Black Friday. So there's a little bit of jockeying around going on in terms of the fight for first place. But all 3 days actually saw record traffic levels last year, with Black Friday getting about 342 million visits. Thanksgiving got 336 million, and Cyber Monday got 320 million visits. And recently, I actually started looking at Hitwise conversion point data for these 3 key dates for the first time. And when I say conversion point data, I mean that I'm looking at how many consumers actually made purchases on these top sites as opposed to just how many visited them. And we have these conversion points, by the way, set up for the top 50 retail sites. We're tracking them every day now moving forward. And so what I saw looking at peak week last year was that conversion rates to those top sites on Thanksgiving Day, they were about 8% lower than we saw on Black Friday and 19% below what we saw on Cyber Monday. So even though Thanksgiving Day had a lot of traffic, there were fewer transactions, which confirms that it's still really a planning day more than a buying day compared to the other days of peak week. But also worth pointing out is the fact that Cyber Monday, despite having the lowest number of visits of the 3 days, actually had the highest conversion rate, which means that those among the share of those shopping, a greater percentage of them were making purchases on Cyber Monday. So that's definitely worth noting. Of course, peak week in general was really just like like enormous, with every single day of peak week falling into the top 10 of the holiday season. Peak week, just so you know, is that we define that as the Wednesday before Thanksgiving through Cyber Tuesday. You'll also see it's got a few more trends on this chart. You'll also see that Mondays while they were still the biggest day of each week, with most Mondays registering in the top 10 visits of the year, we definitely saw Tuesdays and Wednesdays and even Thursdays now were consistently receiving about 90, 95, even sometimes 98% of the traffic levels that were observed on Mondays. So that, telling us that consumers are continuing to shop online deeper into the week, as opposed to what we used to see a few years ago. We'd see that big spike on Monday and then visits quickly dropping off after that. And so this is kind of the new normal, that people do have a little bit of a spike on Mondays, but they continue shopping deeper in the week, and it gives retailers great opportunity to continue to connect with them digitally throughout the week and prepare them to shop in stores closer to the weekend. And then one final thing to note here is that we saw last year that the return of the day after Christmas to one of the top days of the year. It hadn't been among the top days recently, but last year it was. It came in actually at number 4. Part of what might have been helping drive that boost is the day after Christmas fell on a Monday, so some people headed back to the office right away, and they didn't obviously want to miss out on after Christmas Day sales, so their opportunity to shop was digitally. Not really sure if we're going to see that repeat this year, since the day after Christmas is on a Tuesday, but it's definitely something to keep our eyes out for. Now, another thing that we're able to look at with Hitwise data now is hourly traffic trends, and we did this for the top 3 days of the holiday season last year. And as I mentioned before, Thanksgiving was, one of the top days of the season. It received 336 million visits, which averages out to just about 14 million visits per hour. But an analysis of the hourly visits revealed that actually the busiest times of day for Thanksgiving were in those late evening hours. In fact, you can see here that there's a considerable gap in the early afternoon hours, which is probably when most people are eating. But as soon as the table is cleared and people are kicking back, they're going online here to see see what sales might be available the next day. In fact, that 8 to 11 p.m. hour on Thanksgiving was about 50% greater in terms of traffic share than what we saw on an average day during the season. And Amazon, for instance, received fully a quarter, 25% of their visits on Thanksgiving Day from 8 p.m. and onward. So this is a tendency for shoppers to kind of really, get a jump on Black Friday shopping as soon as they're done eating. When it comes to Black Friday, we see the curve for Black Friday spreading their traffic out throughout the day. We saw, again, shoppers from Thanksgiving, that surge late in the day on Thanksgiving continued throughout the night on Black Friday, with the average share coming in overnight above average. And then on Black Friday, the top retail sites were actually busiest between 11 and noon, as opposed to those later hours of the day. And this picture, this is quite a different picture from what retailers saw on both Thanksgiving and Cyber Monday. And in fact, you see later on in the day on Black Friday, people kind of just, got tired and started, decreasing their traffic later in the day. Now, if we look at Cyber Monday in terms of shopping, let me get that line up here for you. In terms of the hourly shopping, we didn't actually see Cyber Monday look altogether different from a typical weekday. Of course, obviously the visits were significantly higher. But we did observe a slightly greater share of online shopping on Cyber Monday happening during kind of the early morning hours of Cyber Monday. So between 6 and 8 a.m. we saw that curve a little bit higher than average. So it does indicate that maybe, after a few hours of rest on Saturday and Sunday, people were up again on Monday morning and kind of a little bit more eager than usual to check out Cyber Monday deals. So, beyond just peak week, obviously, we talked those 3 days are the biggest, but there are definitely other opportunities to engage consumers throughout the year. So let's talk about a few other opportunities. In terms of email marketing last year, like in years past, retailers, they started to slowly ramp up their email campaigns in around mid-November. We saw slight increases in traffic coming from email in that time of year, but it didn't actually really kick in until the week of Black Friday. So that's when most of the major email campaigns really start. And that, in fact, during the week of Black Friday, we were seeing about 1 out of every 14 clicks to retail sites coming from email. And that's really about double what we normally see during a typical time of the year. Of the top 10 email days of the season, of course, 6 occurred during peak week and 1 during the day after Christmas. But Black Friday and Thanksgiving Day were really the top email days of the season. In terms of a couple other kind of manufactured holidays, Small Business Saturday, this year it's November 25th. It's actually a little bit on the decline. Last year we saw searches were down year over year, and that follows an even bigger decline that we saw between 2014 and 2015. So year over year searches are falling for Small Business Saturday, so it may continue to fall this year. Green Monday, on the other hand, it's actually a growing holiday as people become aware of it, and more retailers start to try to use any opportunity to drive additional sales. They're jumping on the Green Monday bandwagon. In fact, year over year searches last year, I think they were up about 70% more than we saw in 2015, and we saw an even bigger jump between 2014 and 2015. But just to level set expectations, Green Monday was still only about half as common in terms of search activity as what we were registering for Small Business Saturday. So it's not quite a household name just yet, and if you're trying to use Green Monday, you might have to invest a little bit of energy in trying to explain what Green Monday is and why it should matter to customers, maybe even more than just driving them in for sales. But I'll also add that if you're using either of these dates, or you're planning on using these dates, generating content on your site it's best practice to really to keep those sites up year-round, as opposed to kind of taking them down immediately afterwards, because that way you'll really be able to gain SEO on those terms for your organic traffic. And then when the time comes to start promoting these holidays, you can just update the content on your site with the information specific to this coming season. I'll move on to gift guides. Obviously, gift guides are an increasingly helpful tool for shoppers who are looking for pretty much any ideas that they can get to to find gifts for people that they're shopping for. And they're a great opportunity for retail marketers to capture attention of shoppers with additional seasonal content, but also general media outlets are increasingly producing these lists and generating a lot of traffic and referrals from that to retail sites. Increasingly, actually, consumers are starting to look for these gift guides more and more every year. So making sure that you provide gift guide lists for specific people, like best gifts for men, best gifts for college students, women, kids, whatever it is, people are going to be looking for those searches. And in fact, we see that they are definitely start as early as the first week of November, but they reach their peak right before Christmas as people kind of get tired of shopping and kind of have fatigue and really just need someone to tell them what to buy. So the peak week for gift guide searches is the last week before Christmas. And moving on to a couple more holidays to look at. So the Ugly Sweater Day this year, it's on Friday, December 15th. It's actually associated with Save the Children charity. It's a much bigger holiday in the UK than it is in the United States, but it is catching on in the United States. In fact, in 2014, we saw that searches, 2015, we saw that searches for ugly Christmas sweater really correlate with the official day of the year at all. But last year, they definitely started peaking right around the ugly Christmas sweater holiday. So there is evidence that the holiday is starting to catch on over here. So there may be opportunities for you to engage customers or partner with charities around that day, because consumers are increasingly aware of it. We definitely saw Star Wars sweaters, Rick and Morty sweaters, and DIY varieties among the most popular last year, so they definitely kind of have some branding opportunities as well. When it comes to gift card searches, obviously the increasing digital nature of gift cards make them a really great last minute buy, including on the day of Christmas itself, with the peak searches for gift cards coming in really on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Now we definitely see some activity of people starting on Christmas Day to search for gift swaps and gift card swaps and trades, but even excluding those search variations, we still see Christmas Day as a really big day for people buying gifts. So even as you're in the process of pivoting from selling to redeeming gift cards, don't forget that there's a lot of last minute gift card shoppers on Christmas Day. And then I'll wrap up this section by just talking about Christmas Day in general. Obviously, that's the day that a lot of these gadgets come to life. People are busy downloading driver softwares and apps and registering and activating things. In fact, one interesting stat is that we saw that searches for download and activate were about 27% higher or so on Christmas Day than they were a week prior. So even as you're kind of prepping for those after Christmas Day clearance sales, there's great opportunities that shouldn't be missed for engaging customers and keeping them back for more. Last year we saw, some retailers, not retailers, but the Hatchimal product was really, really big last year, and a lot of people had problems with Hatchimals, and it kind of became a social media nightmare for the company as people were trying to get a hold of somebody who would be able to provide support and explain what was going on with their Hatchimals that weren't working. So again, don't forget to make sure you have plenty of people, plenty of staff on hand to handle any types of customer service issues on Christmas Day. Next, we're going to pivot to talk about just where did all this traffic come from? Who was getting all this traffic, I should say, and the short answer still is Amazon. In December last year, we saw over a third of visits to the Retail 500 being accounted for by Amazon.com. That was down a little bit year over year. The website got just shy of 2 billion visits in 2016. While in 2015 it got just over 2 billion visits. I do have to note that these traffic levels are looking only at visits to Amazon.com on mobile and desktop browsers, so it doesn't account for the likely growing use of the Amazon mobile app, but it is pretty clear that kind of the robust growth that we saw between 2014 and 2015 for Amazon has slowed down quite a bit last year. And obviously Amazon is not going anywhere, but that flat year over year traffic has actually allowed some of the other top retailers to start to post growth in terms of market share. And one of the examples we saw is Walmart. Last year and increased their visit share by 11% relative to the year before, going from, you can see it, going up to about 6.7% in 2016, up from 6% year over year. Home Depot and Lowe's also posted really nice year over year gains. Other sites, including JCPenney, Costco, and Sarah Best Buy did very well, growing their share year over year. So pretty good year opportunities for some of these other retailers to make gains against Amazon last year. And with Amazon traffic kind of coming in flat, we might see that continued trend this year. But that said, the top 15 sites, the ones you're seeing here on your screen, they still took almost 60% of the traffic to the Hitwise Retail 500, and that's even up from the year earlier. So we are seeing even more and more concentration at the top, so those top retailers are getting bigger and bigger. And that said, there are some other retailers beyond the top 15 that we think are ones to watch. And so these ones that you see on your screen here are ones that posted really nice gains between December 2015 and December 2016, and also they continued to post gains in visits between May 2016 and May this year. Top of the list is Hayneedle. It's a site not dissimilar from Wayfair. It's doing really well year over year, something to keep your eye on. Jet, which obviously is now part of Walmart, has a potential to play an even bigger role this holiday season. But other than those sites, I think it's interesting to look at the other trend that we're seeing here. It's sites that generally cater more to male shoppers, so like Tire and Auto Store, O'Reilly and Tire Rack, and home improvement stores, Northern Tool, Menards, not to mention Home Depot and Lowe's that we saw on the previous slide. This may really be kind of the beginning of, a growing crowd of men shopping online during the holiday season. So it's something to consider moving into 2017. Now, if we look at kind of device breakdown when it comes to device split, right now, as of the most recent 4 weeks, we were seeing visits to the Hitwise Retail 500. About 44% of them were coming from mobile devices. Now that's about 26% higher than the all industry average. So retailers are still doing a better job, or they're ahead of the game when it comes to handling mobile visits. And while we have been closely watching this number, expecting it to ultimately break through that 50% mark, it does seem stalled at this point. And some of that might be an increasing growth in success in mobile apps, like we saw with Amazon, keeping that number kind of suppressed a little bit in terms of mobile web visits. But we do see a little bit of an increase during the holiday season, so that 44% might go up to 45, 46% in November and December this year. But one place that we do expect to see more growth happening, not just in visit count, but is actually where those conversions are taking place in transactions. So, with one-click ordering and things like that, mobile purchases are getting easier and easier, and we do expect mobile to be a bigger driver of revenue this season, even if it's not necessarily significantly increasing the amount of traffic. If you look at the top retail sites, these sites especially do tend to have a greater share of traffic coming from mobile device, with the exception of probably Amazon. But as I mentioned before, the fact that they're getting only 38% of traffic from mobile devices indicates that a lot of their mobile engagement is happening now through their app, it has a really strong foothold and is one of the most popular apps, I think, online. And we do see Target actually saw their share of mobile decline a little bit, and that's another company that has a really strong app, especially with their Cartwheel app. But in general, we see about more than half of the top 10 retail sites enjoying a majority of traffic already from mobile devices. So we definitely are seeing these bigger sites being mobile dominant these days. Now, quickly, I wanted to just look at kind of where some of the traffic is coming from, which is important to understand, obviously. We do see about 45% or so of traffic to the top retail sites coming from search engines, and that's flat year over year. It's holding steady at about 45%. A couple of places where we're seeing growth still is in social networking and forums. That's social networking sites are driving about 7% greater share of traffic to retailers last year than the year before, and that's following an impressive growth that we saw between 2014 and 2015. Multimedia sites too are showing impressive growth and driving traffic as people become more and more accustomed to engaging consumers and even driving sales directly from some of those multimedia platforms. And I will mention too, during our holiday wrap-up webinar that we hosted in January, we saw that one of the bigger drivers behind growth, at least in social networking, social media platforms, is due to paid social posts. So we expect those paid posts to go up again this year and drive the social networking industry even higher in terms of importance of driving traffic to retail sites. But as I mentioned before, search still being really the dominant driver of traffic still to retail sites. And on that note, I'm going to let Sarah come in and talk about some of the things and some of the best practices that Best Buy is employing in terms of using some of the Hitwise data to drive their search campaigns.
Great. Thanks, John. And hello, everybody. As John just mentioned in the previous slide, search is still one of the top drivers contributing to traffic that gets to a retailer's website. So we actually look at search quite often at Best Buy, and we use search trends to understand how we're stacking up in the marketplace compared to competitors. And we look at paid and organic search clicks, And that also helps us involve the right business partners internally to understand if we should maybe make a change in our investment in paid search or reevaluate content that we're exposing online to help increase our organic share. So this chart that you see on your screen is actually a great trend we like to see because we internally made some changes back in the middle of April that we already were starting to notice some impacts from our home theater search clicks. So we looked at an existing portfolio of search terms within the home theater area, and partnering internally, we realized we had some opportunity to invest in some additional paid search efforts. And in doing that, we see that our search share of clicks actually increased and changed the trend we were seeing back in April. So in that case, this showed a great example of a change in paid search. And now, yep, John, you can go on.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, this next slide talks really to a change that we wanted to measure organically. So what we see here is one of our pages on bestbuy.com that is for our gaming category, so the PlayStation 4. And you can see on this page, we have a lot of content exposed. And the customer can shop really any console related to PS4, any game or accessory for that type of console. And there's a lot of information on this page. It's very content heavy. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to change it and simplify the experience. So the experience that is now live on bestbuy.com allows the customer to add the products directly to cart from this experience, but that meant we had to remove a lot of content on the page. And in doing so, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to hurt ourselves from an organic position in the marketplace. So this next slide that you'll see on your screen really shows the change. So we know we changed the content on the page, so we wanted to make sure that that change didn't impact how we showed up negatively. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see Best Buy against the competitive set with the share of any gaming search term. And on the right side is where Best Buy is just listed out with organic share. So although we made a change in the content-facing customers, we did not negatively hurt where we stood in the marketplace. We know that organic rankings and page content is only one lever that could impact this behavior, but overall we know during this time frame that the gaming category really had a great year with new product launches from Nintendo and Xbox, but to know that we could remove some content on our site and still show up relatively strong within organic search, that's definitely a good place to be. So the last comment I wanted to make about how we've used Hitwise data at Best Buy is really making sure that we stay relevant in the consumer and how they're shopping perhaps new categories that we didn't know existed. So I have to use this example of the fidget spinner. So what we had seen internally, some of my team members were noticing some failed search terms with this term fidget, and we didn't know what that was. So after investigating a little bit further, we were able to use Hitwise to see some top trending terms that use the word fidget and where that upstream and downstream traffic was going. And we realized that we internally had an opportunity to fulfill some customer needs in the marketplace and perhaps start assorting this product. So it helps us use terms that the customers are already using out in the industry and perhaps use some of those same terms in our marketing material or customer-facing assets. As you can see here, we're showing a page on bestbuy.com where we are now selling fidget spinners as well. So we'll no longer lose out on that downstream share of clicks. So that was just one key new product that we saw at Best Buy. But John, do you want to take us through some more to keep on the lookout for this next holiday?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great transition. I'm already kind of tired of the fidget spinner, but I think we have a few months ahead of us before it goes anywhere. So that is a good transition into talking about hot products, and it's always one that people anticipate us to start discussing. So before we talk about what we're seeing in 2017, just a recap of what we saw in 2016, because a lot of these trends will still reappear, I think, this year. Hatchimals last year, the whole season was all about Hatchimals. From the first week of the season to the last week of the season, Hatchimals was the #1 product, and not just the #1 toy. It was the #1 product overall. It kicked Fitbit out of the #1 space, and Fitbit had enjoyed that spot for every week of 2015. It pushed it out to #2. The Nintendo Classic was more of a product, was definitely a good product overall, and it was more of a product for adults and millennials than it was for toys, and you'll see that a little bit more on the next slide. Another thing that we saw is like the Amazon Echo and the Google Home, which launched prior to Christmas last year, were also hot, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. Obviously, last year, Amazon was probably a little bit nervous of the impact of the Google Home, but Alexa clearly won last year's search activity for that product. But the Google Home did establish itself in the market, so I think it has an opportunity to grow a lot this year. And so while most of the products these days, and you hear a lot about electronics in terms of our hot products this week, there were definitely a few kind of non-wired classics, like we saw Yankee Candle, and that appears every year in our top products list. Lego also regularly makes an appearance, but we also see things, like wireless speakers and other types of products always kind of making regular appearance in the top 10. Now look at the top toys, and these are searches specifically driving visits to the toy category. Hatchimals, again, was obviously the leader every week, and it was definitely the toy to beat, despite the fact that they were out of stock a lot of places and almost impossible to get your hands on. Normally, in fact, we would see a product like that fade quickly as it became out of stock, but shoppers really, really wanted it last year. And in fact, it's still doing pretty well, and we'll talk about that in a couple more slides. But we saw, again, as I mentioned, the Nintendo Classic was really popular like the first week when it came out among toy searches, but it kind of dropped off, and in fact, the Nintendo 2DS and 3DS kind of came up. So in terms of shoppers looking for gifts for kids specifically, the Nintendo Classic did well, but it faded. Paw Patrol toys, Calico Critter, Shopkins, those types of kind of evergreen classics also just did pretty well throughout the year, throughout the season last year. So now we'll get into a sneak peek at what we're seeing in 2017. Again, so what we're doing to kind of look into this crystal ball, because it's still a little early for people to start shopping for Christmas gifts. In fact, if we're looking at a lot of the stuff that they're shopping for right now, it's summer related, and they're going to quickly get into back to school season. But we do see some trends in our search data, but I'm also starting to look at internal site search. So that means that what we're doing is actually seeing what people are searching for, not just on Google and Bing and AOL, but what are they actually searching for on Amazon, on Walmart, on Target, and some of those other top retail sites that we're tracking on a regular basis. And that's actually a really good way to see what people are looking for, especially because a lot of people are bypassing, search engines in general to go straight to their preferred retailer for things like electronics, whether they're going straight to Best Buy or, to Toys R Us when it comes to toys, or Amazon when it comes to pretty much anything these days. So it's really important to have insight into not only what people are searching for on search engines, but looking at internal search as well to get that full picture. But I digress. Back to the point, here are the top 10 products, I think, that are going to really be big this year. We saw kind of a pretty flat year last year for Xbox and PS4, but both of those have upgraded and are offering kind of more advanced, more powerful system for like 4D gaming. That fidget spinner, it has been, it's cooled off a little bit, but it had been internal searches on Amazon and in Walmart. It had been one of the top, if not the top, search for product for several weeks over the past month or so. Nintendo, the Switch we already knew was going to be really big, and it has been so far. In fact, searches for Nintendo in general this year are already up 719%, and that was before Nintendo announced this week the launch of the SNES Classic, so that's going to be replacing the Nintendo Classic that we saw last year. In fact, iPads and iPads Pro were not really popular last year, and we're still kind of in the halo of Apple's announcement events. So these searches are up considerably right now, about 56% year over year, but they may have struck a chord with the new sizes and new pricing for that iPad Pro. So we may see that product do better than usual this holiday season. Fitbit searches are still down. Searches are down, I should say, about 13% year over year. But it's still holding really, really strong, and we expect that Fitbit will not disappoint us this year. Even if they don't claim the top or the second spot of the season, they'll still make a regular appearance in the top 10, and I'm sure that they'll be announcing some new products in the weeks ahead. And when it comes to those smart speakers, I think that that's going to really be the category to keep an eye on this year. Echo, again, we mentioned before, was big last year. Amazon obviously just started shipping their Echo Show this week. The Dot and the Tap are also really popular, so searches for Echo related products are up about 153% right now. Google Home searches are up 547% this year, and HomePod, which is obviously brand new, is already becoming one of the top 10 products that people are searching for right now. Just other things to keep in mind, we see Chromecast here. I could have also put the Fire TV or Fire Stick in there. As these types of speakers become increasingly connected to other devices in the home, people are looking to pick up some of those connected add-ons to make their televisions communicate with their smart speakers, and we expect those things to kind of continue. Another couple things to mention, Nespresso is trending really well, and in fact, Nespresso I think is becoming the new Keurig. Keurig had been really popular, but it's getting a little bit less popular. And then Instant Pot, in terms of another maybe home appliance product, will probably be pretty big this season. Looking at the toys that we expect to be big, again, we would probably see Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo SNES Classic be big. Obviously, fidget spinners. Nerf guns have always been really big around the holiday season, as are Legos. Hatchimals, it's still the number 5 search for product on Toys R Us right now. So you can now get a sparkly version if that so suits you. And I'm sure that they'll probably have a few tricks up their sleeve as we head closer and closer to the holidays. And interestingly, the PS4, but specifically the gold version, is really popular right now on toy sites. So we would expect that those to kind of trend well this holiday season. And again, those classic gifts, Paw Patrol toys, Dino Trucks, Shopkins, will probably still perform relatively well this holiday season. One other thing I wanted to add is it's more a category than a product, but subscription boxes for kids. Hasbro just announced the launch of their gaming crate, so you'll get a board game delivered to you every month. It can be their family or a kid's board game, and searches, visits to those kids subscription sites that we've been tracking for the past few years are up 308% this year, and they always surge around Christmas time. So again, keep an eye on that. And then one thing I have to talk about, and that's kind of maybe a little bit disturbing, so brace your eyes if you need to, but I do see like potential for this toy called the Automatone to kind of become really popular this year. Searches for it have increased 75 times year over year, and it's actually almost among the top 1,000 products on Amazon right now. And I'm going to show like an animated GIF of what it actually does. It kind of an instrument, but it also looks like it's coming out of the mouth. So, it's kind of part clarinet or saxophone, part nightmare. But I think that this might be one of those Hatchimal-like products that people are suddenly searching for all over the place as we get closer to Christmas. And then I wanted to kind of wrap up with just looking at a couple of the a couple categories here, specifically looking at the smart home category, because as we mentioned, it is growing and becoming increasingly popular. In fact, if we look at searches for some of the smart home products, those would be products like Nest and Echo and Home Speaker. They've increased 261% over the past 3 years. And in fact, this is a huge spike last Christmas, and versus the Christmas before. We always see a big spike, but the spike last Christmas was 240% bigger than the Christmas before. So we expect a really significant spike in searches for these next year, or this coming holiday season, I should say. If we want to look at the top products that make up this category right now it's interesting. Google Home, and this is just looking, of course, just at search engine visits. Activity. So if we were to incorporate Amazon internal search, we'd probably see Amazon Echo getting a little bit more share. But Google Home is doing really, really well right now with about 10% of branded search. Amazon Echo getting about 9%, although it's kind of flat year over year. Nest, the suite of products, Nest Protect, Nest Cam, Nest Thermostats, they still come in at 9%, though they are down a little bit year over year. The Arlo camera is at 5% and it's up 44% year over year. And then the HomePod, again, it's a brand new product and it already claims 5% of branded search for this category as of the last few weeks. I do want to mention, last year we were talking about this really hot new product from Apple called the AirPods, and they didn't even make it to market before Christmas. So this is a new product from Apple. We want to make sure that it's actually going to hit the shelves in time for the holiday season. They're announcing a December release, but it's still one to keep a close eye on it. Yeah, hopefully they'll be able to launch it, but we did learn last year that that's not always the case. Now, if we look at the people who are behind these products, like who is actually searching for these smart speakers specifically, not just the smart home products, we see that, they are using our audience view platform. We can tell who they are kind of demographically and what they look like attitudinally. We see that the sweet spot is really age 35 to 44. They have a college degree. They have household incomes of 100,000 or more. They generally identify themselves as leaning left or liberal. They have kids typically ages 3 to 9 in the home. They are more likely to have boys in the home. To let you know, they generally tend to be health conscious, and they are much more likely to say, kind of all things being equal, I'd prefer to buy things online today. And if you're looking at some of the markets that they hail from, Austin, Las Vegas, and San Diego are some of the markets where we're seeing really high concentrations of people searching for these smart home speakers these days. Now, if we want to also look at where else they're shopping, this also tells us a little bit more about them. Obviously they're more likely to be shopping at electronic stores, and Sarah, you'll be happy to know that they're about almost 3 times more likely to be shopping at Best Buy. But our data also shows that they're much more likely to be shopping at home stores. In fact, the West Elm, Crate and Barrel, Pottery Barn, the stores you see on your screen here now, they're about 3 times more likely to shop at these stores on average. So that really tells us, that they're not just gadget people, that they're actually looking at home improvements and home repairs. And our additional audience view data showed us that they're significantly more likely to have recently moved or bought a new house or planning some type of a home renovation product. So this is a great opportunity for them to upgrade the technology in their new home or their new space. And I know Sarah and I were speaking about it before. It's probably a great market for some of those new Samsung frame TVs as we head into the holiday season. And so we also want to look at some things that they're searching for. And in fact, the search data confirms that they are much more likely to search. They are in the process of renovating or upgrading a new home. They're searching for hot water heaters. They're searching for closet doors. They're searching for faucets and things like that. But it's also really interesting. They're searching for Best Buy rewards. So they're probably planning on making some significant purchases and want to make sure that they get the appropriate rewards out of them. And also the fact that they're looking for return policy. This, in this instance, is Best Buy return policy. Anything that you can do as a retailer to help make your return policy information up front and center for someone who might be on the fence about whether to buy something will help turn them into a buyer. These are just a couple of other categories that this audience is more likely to be searching for. So good insight into kind of how you can reach and engage this set. But I also wanted to cover, at least for a few minutes at the end, do a little bit of a spotlight on people searching for soft goods. There were about 3.1 million Americans that were searching for what we call soft good gift items. So things like pajamas and sweaters and vests and things like that, and fleeces. Not necessarily dresses and shoes, but things that you would give around the holiday seasons as gifts. There were about 3.1 million people looking for those last holiday season, And that's a lot bigger than what we saw in terms of the smart speaker audience. So it's an audience we really shouldn't forget about, in a category that we should still make sure we pay attention to. And so when we look at that category, what you're looking at here on your screen, these are the top searched for products. We see sweaters and pajamas being really the top two drivers of this category. And if we look at search data again, we can see the types of sweaters that people are specifically looking for. So you see Christmas and ugly. So ugly Christmas sweater still being probably one of the big drivers for that. And we also can see that that sweaters for men slightly just outnumber searches for sweaters for women. Cashmere sweaters are more popular than wools or knits, and cardigan sweaters are more popular than sweater vests and turtlenecks, at least they were last year. And another thing to note is that plus size sweaters were also trending up in 2016. So that search data can tell us a lot about what types of products people are looking for and help your merchandising teams. In terms of the soft goods gift givers, like who they are, just like we did for the male, for the smart speaker audience, which was leaning a little bit more male, we'd see this audience leaning much more female. About 60–70% of them are female. The sweet spot for age is 25 to 44, so they do skew a little bit younger. 100,000 income for household. They also hold college degrees. They are about 30% more likely to be homemakers, but we see still the majority of them are employed at least full or part-time. In terms of like their attitudes, they definitely are driven by social media ratings and reviews. They are status drivers, so they want to buy things that their neighbors would approve of, and they like to spend long times in stores browsing. So that's something to keep in mind, that they like to have the hands-on experience. In terms of where they're shopping, they're just really big shoppers in general. I don't think there was a single retailer in the top 500 that they didn't shop at above average rates. But these ones you're looking at on screen here are ones that they shop at about 5 times greater than the U.S. average. And in fact, no surprise, these are retailers that trade in primarily soft goods, so it's not really a big surprise that they would be more likely to shop at a Land's End or LL Bean or Nordstrom. And then kind of wrapping this section up, other things that they're searching for, obviously they're searching for some of those soft goods that we talked about before, family pajamas and sweaters and whatnot. But they're also searching for things like stocking stuffers and white elephant gifts, and they like personalized gifts. They are coupon seekers and deal seeking consumers are looking for coupons and Black Friday deals more likely than average. And while they're not necessarily searching for a lot of electronics and gadgets, they are looking for some type of electronics related gifts, whether they're looking for them for their kids or their boyfriends, like we saw Nintendos and Legos and a few other electronic gifts kind of come up at top. But this is like these are the type of products that this soft goods gift giver are generally shopping for. So I'll wrap up before we have and give a few minutes for questions at the end. So if you haven't yet submitted a question and you have one, feel free to submit them through the questions or the chat feature on GoToWebinar. And while you're doing that, I'll just go through a few top takeaways, starting with the fact that Thanksgiving still remains one of the biggest holiday online shopping days of the year, but the conversions, remember, are relatively low, indicating that it's still primarily a planning day, and Cyber Monday still sees the top conversion rate of the year. Mobile's growth in terms of site visits has generally stalled, but revenue we think is on the rise, and increasing one-click purchases will help drive some of that more mobile revenue in the 2017 holiday season. Obviously, as Sarah mentioned, it's important to track your share of both paid and organic search and to see what your share of organic search is relative to pay overall, relative to yourself and to your competition, and that'll help you make informed decisions and course adjustments to stay ahead. Also, it's good to stay on top of consumer trends, and looking at that online search data, it's really invaluable for telling you what consumers are looking for right now, and it's in fact kind of what their motivations are behind it, and including looking at internal search again on your competitors' sites even is a really great source of competitive insight and audience insights. It's really the best resource for this type of information into what consumers' changing tastes and preferences are. And then finally, gadgets will still be among the season's hottest products, with those smart speakers probably being among the hottest of the year. But don't forget, there are still millions of consumers out there seeking traditional soft goods who have limited interest in electronics. So you can't forget about those consumers. So I'll turn it over to Rochelle, who I think said she has a couple of questions for us.
Yeah, great insights there, John and Sarah. Thank you guys so much. So I'm going to take a look at some of our questions. This question looks like it's for you, John. For the hourly data you shared earlier in the webinar, were we looking at EST or PST?
That is a good question. I believe that it's EST data.
Got it. And then this is a question that I think could work for either of you if you have any thoughts. Are there any other hot products you've been seeing crop up outside of technology, toys, or pajamas and soft goods?
Outside of all those big categories, I'm not really sure. Outside of, like, definitely outside of, I mean, that automaton thing is kind of outside of all categories, I think. But I would say I'm not really sure.
Another one that John and I were talking about were just drones and the amount of interest in that category. They've been now in the market for a couple of years, but with new product launches and whatnot, I think that's definitely one to keep an eye out on. And then that picture frame TV, that was something new to me that I wasn't necessarily familiar with. But it's pretty neat, the technology that they're coming out with now.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning those drones, Sarah. I forgot that I bought a few of those in my household in the last few months.
And then for internal website searches, someone was asking if that's available to anyone who uses Hitwise.
It is available to any Hitwise client, though it's not included with your standard license, but we'd be happy to talk to you about getting access to it. And in fact, we have some nice retail packages right now where it can give you access to internal search for a package of sites, as well as product trackers and conversion data. So if you're interested in something like that, I would encourage you to speak to your client engagement representative or to your sales rep.
All right, well, I think that's about all we've got. I think it's a good time to wrap up, just as leading into 11 o'clock. But a reminder to everybody that the recording and the slides from this webinar will be available and emailed within the next day. And thank you, John and Sarah, so much. You guys did a great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.